Hi, my name is Kevin Ross, and I'm the president and CEO of digitalandradiofacts.com. I am also a member of the Brilliant Minds Collective. BMC is a think tank. Our members represent sectors such as healthcare, education, entertainment, finance, communication, and more. And we're located in various countries all over the world. We're focused on creating opportunities for engagement and economic advancement for Black people globally. If you're interested in joining Brilliant Minds Collective, we'd love to have you. The link to our Facebook page and contact information will be added to the chat. We ask that every participant kindly remain muted. Please note that this webinar is being recorded, and your continued participation access consent to be a part of this recording in its entirety. We encourage you to comment and ask questions. Our administrator will ensure that your questions will be fed to the speaker. Now, with that being said, we welcome you to our webinar, which is entitled Kamala, Meghan, and Me, the Real Deal About Mixed Black Identity in 2021. I'm honored to introduce my fellow BMC member, TaRessa Stovall. She's the author of the critically acclaimed book, Swirl Girl, Coming of Race in the USA, and award-winning journalist, Alma Hill. TaRessa Stovall was born a jazz baby in Seattle, Washington, when much of the country was racially segregated, and her parents' marriage was illegal in 16 states. Her new memoir, Swirl Girl, Coming of Race in the USA, reveals how she grew up battling society and sometimes her closest loved ones to forge her identity on her own terms. Swirl Girl was published by the independent Black company, Alchemy Media Publishing, and is available on TaRessaStovall.com, as well as Amazon.com. TaRessa is honored to be serving as a current author in residence for the Tacoma program at her alma mater, the Evergreen State College, where she earned her BA in Communications. An author from the age of 7, TaRessa has written and published poems, books, and plays on various topics, including racial identity and the impact of colorism on people of color. Her books include A Love Supreme, Real-Life Stories of Black Love, Portraits of 20 Couples with a foreword by Ruby Dee. The book was featured on Oprah's In the Spirit, The Hotspot, a novel, and The Buffalo Soldiers, a children's book. She has also co-edited anthologies with Tracy Price Thompson. TaRessa is an award-winning journalist, proud mother of a son and daughter, both multi-talented writers and creatives. She lives in Atlanta, where she stirs things up on social media. Alma Hill is an award-winning journalist with more than 20 years of experience as a news reporter, editor, creative writer, branding and communications expert, college professor, and political strategist, in addition to working as a staff writer for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and Portland Oregonian newspapers. Alma's work has appeared in such publications as Essence and Black Enterprise magazines. Like TaRessa Stovall, Alma is a native of Seattle, Washington. The two met in the late 60s when they were guinea pigs bused to Jane Addams Junior High School in an early desegregation experiment. The Homeds have much more in common. TaRessa's husband, Calvin Stovall, is one of Alma's former AJC editors. Like TaRessa, Alma lives in Atlanta. She's the proud mother of 2 adult sons. Alma has an MFA in creative writing from Queen's University in Charlotte, North Carolina, and a BA in journalism from Seattle University. Ladies and gentlemen, TaRessa Stovall.
So honored to be here and to have this important conversation with Alma Hill, my homette, as I call her, and with all of you tonight. So thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. It's great being here. And thank you, TaRessa, for inviting me to talk with you about your book. I am a fan of it, as you know. And I was one of the early purchasers of Swirl Girl. So TaRessa, you know, you and I go a long way back. Like that song says, a long, long way back. I remember meeting you on the first day of school. It must have been 1969. going to Jane Addams. Um, so when I read your book, it was near and dear to my heart. So why did you write this book, and why do you think it is especially relevant today?
Well, Alma, I wrote Swirl Girl for a couple reasons. I wrote Swirl Girl, first of all, because I wanted to help move everybody, but especially mixed Black people and Black people, past what we've been stuck in, what the brilliant novelist Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie taught us in her landmark TED Talk, the danger of a single story. And so mixed Black people in the USA have been stuck in a single story for 400 plus years. We've been here from the beginning, but we really haven't been portrayed in ways that are accurate, empowering, or realistic or healthy for anybody. And so I wrote Swirl Girl because I grew up reading and writing and waiting for the book that did that. And finally, you know, I got to be a senior citizen, and I said, let me just write this book. And by the way, don't feel bad about your memoir. It took me forever to write Swirl Girl. It really took a long, long time. So that was the main reason I wrote it. And I also wrote it because there are, for the first time in US history, I believe, ongoing public conversations about mixed race identity in general. And of course, because this is the US, mixed Black identity in particular, that bubble up to the forefront and go viral when a celebrity or public figure is involved. But they're really ongoing in a way they never have been before. And I wanted to add Swirl Girl to the conversation because there are very few reference points for people beyond the stereotypical tragic mulatto single story. I wanted to widen, you know, the opportunities both for mixed people and for other people who are interested in this topic to see beyond that limited view that we've been stuck in for so long.
I see. Okay. And so there was a point in your life when you were told that you couldn't be what you were or who you were. Do you recall that?
I do recall that, Alma. So I want to share a
And
little
you're going to read us
excerpt.
an excerpt from your book
Yes,
about
I'm going to
that
share a little excerpt.
defining
Yes.
moment.
1969, Jane Addams, as you referenced. So
Jane Addams.
Jane Addams in this Seattle's North End. And Alma grew up, just for reference for everybody, in Seattle's pre-gentrified central area, or colored district as it was called. We called it the CD, which was pretty much created by redlining. And so Seattle wanted to experiment with racial integration, even though they weren't technically super segregated. So this was a voluntary racial transfer program. I was in it involuntarily. My mother put it in there because when I was going to school in the neighborhood, I acted an 8th grade fool, and she was done with that. So 9th grade, being bused against my will to integrate schools in Seattle's faraway North End. The white students didn't want us there. I made a new friend who intrigued me. She was a Black girl who lived in the North End and didn't ride the bus out there with the rest of us. She was brown skinned and the kind of cute that would blossom into high cheekbone beauty. Like me, she had a few pimples and a couple extra pounds. What are you? She asked me one day. Mixed. Like with what? She talked like the kids in the North End. Black and Jewish. But you can't be Black and Jewish at the same time. Those two things just don't go together. I mean, Black people are Christian and go to church, and Jewish people are Jewish and go to synagogue, I said with a sigh. Yeah, see what I mean? So they don't fit, you can't be both. I wondered if growing up Black in such a white environment had damaged her brain. Then I thought about it. If none of the Black people she'd seen were Jewish, and none of the Jewish people she'd seen were Black, maybe it was hard for her to imagine one person being both. But I was a living, breathing example that it was possible. I stood to face her. I can be Black and Jewish because that's what I am, okay? You mean like Sammy Davis Jr.? Oh, hell no. Sammy Davis Jr. is what he, okay, he's different, that's all, but we're both real. If you don't believe that, you can't be my friend. She stared at me, then nodded one time, and we never discussed my identity again. that
Wow.
conversation is part of the reason I do this work and that I wrote this book.
Wow. Do you think, looking back on it, that going to Jane Addams, was it easier for you to be accepted once you got to the school because you were mixed race? Easier than me, perhaps? Or was it harder?
I don't know if it was either easier or harder, Alma, because I didn't integrate or assimilate in any way. I mean, I was a bus kid. I was bused from the CD, and that was who I, interacted with. I mean, I met white kids. I knew a couple of white kids, from elementary school who were there. But for the most part, I would have to say I always felt like a trespasser, like a quote unquote alien, like someone who had popped in from a strange place and was trying to figure out how to navigate this strange, and it was to me a very frosty, unwelcoming environment. Like I never felt like they really made any kind of accommodations for us or even acknowledged that we were coming in and that we were different and what that meant. So I don't know if it was easier or harder. I think that, obviously visually, I could, blend in much more easily, but none of them, other than the one boy I wrote about, reached out to be at all friendly or talk to me or anything.
It's funny that you would say that because I was there for 3 years. You were in the 9th grade when you started, and I was in the 7th. And my entire junior high school years, I never befriended any of the kids at Jane Addams. Part of it was because, we had to be on the bus when it was time to go. If you missed the bus, your whole life changed. You had to go over the river and through the woods to get back home. But I never became friends with anyone. No one ever invited me to their homes, and nor did I invite them to my community. And, you talk about my neighborhood, Leschi. Back then, Leschi, again, was in the central area. Today, I can't afford to live in Leschi because it's so expensive. So it is interesting how times have changed. Do you think it's easier though now? It's so mixed in Seattle. It's so much different. The complexion, it's hard to find an all Black girl like me.
Yes, that's true.
Do you think it's easier for people now?
I think that kind of environment, and there are a few cities in the US where mixed couples and their children are so prevalent that when you are mixed, you're not automatically othered, you're not viewed as strange. And you're absolutely right about Seattle. And Seattle was like that to an extent when we were growing up. So what I say to people, it was a great place to grow up as a mixed child. It was not a great place to stay as a Black identified mixed Black woman, which is why I came to Atlanta. But and the racial politics there are very interesting because they favor mixedness over what we now call monoracial Blackness or not mixed Blackness, and multiculturalism over Blackness. Still, there's still arguments about those kinds of things, and that's part of the racial politics, as we know, of the Pacific Northwest and Northern California to a lesser extent, I think.
So as an adult, I know your children are adults now, but based on everything that is going on today and your experience then, do you think that you would bus your children? I don't think I would do it again. I don't know.
No.
I value in being in your community.
I wouldn't bus my children the way we were bused. I would not. No, I don't. I didn't come out of that experience. And of course, like you, I then went on to 3 years of bust high school. So, I'm not one of those people who walked away and felt like it had a significant impact on my life either way. I don't feel like the education I got was any better than I would have gotten at Garfield or Meany. I just knew that I was familiar with how to navigate very frosty. Roosevelt was less frosty, but very frosty very, very white environments. And outside of where we live, Seattle's uber white, still is, and so
Right.
I wouldn't put them on a bus in that kind of way unless it was a really good reason. Like the school had a gifted program, that kind of thing. And my kid absolutely needed to be in that program, or a special STEM or arts focus, that kind of thing. But just in general to integrate, no, I don't think it was a successful experiment.
Right. I think it's funny sometimes about how our parents, my mother and father, just threw us to the wolves. They didn't take us to school on the first day. They went for maybe PTA meetings, but you had to handle it. Nothing like today's children.
Oh,
who,
nothing.
right, nothing at all. So, Vice President Kamala Harris and Meghan Markle, there are just a few of mixed Black race celebrities whose backgrounds, appearances, and cultural affinities are often processed in the public domain. Why do you think this is significant today? I mean, have you noticed it, and if so, why do you think that's significant?
I've absolutely noticed it. I think it's significant, Alma, because I believe that for the first time in US history, again, there's a sustained public conversation. A lot of it is happening digitally about mixed race people, identity, presence, how we look, how we identify, how we move through different spaces, and how we navigate them. That is an ongoing conversation. It gets to be super public when, again, a celebrity, public figure, political figure is involved, and we see it. We see the public kind of identity policing, shredding, analysis, debates, right? Again and again and again. What's different and new now, and I think that this has been on the upswing since President Barack Obama came on the scene, 2007, 2008, is a heightened awareness. And in 2000, it was the first time there was a mixed race-ish category on the census, which is repeated in 2010 and 2020, which says some other race, and then you're supposed to write in what you are. So public opinion also, again, just people are more vocal. The parents of mixed children are more vocal. Mixed people are much more vocal. And so while, yes, racial categories are assigned, and they're still assigned by the government. You can call yourself what you want, but if you're filling out government paperwork, you got to go along with their program to some extent or something. But so there's also that dialectic between the tension between what the officials or the systems call you, or where they put you, and where you might put yourself, and then where other people put you. So what's happening is people are more outspoken, and you have more mixed race people who are adults, who are in the public sphere. So years and years ago, when Tiger Woods, rocked out Cablinasian, the world was not having it. Nobody was ready. We didn't even have social media then, I don't think. But the world wasn't ready for that. It was not well received. It was very clumsy. But what he was trying to do is not unusual or strange. But up until just a few years ago, we all know that in general, and I call it political or systemic Blackness, whatever you look like, however you identify, whatever your ancestry, or however you grew up culturally, if you've got any Black in you, you are politically or systemically Black. But how that came when we were growing up, one drop was not referenced often, but it was like, if you're Black, you're Black. If you have any Black in you, you're Black. And that was just how it was. But we understood that that was the law of the land. And then we all responded to that in different ways. Well, what's happening now is now you've got people who are a little more outspoken. And so what's interesting to me and different, and I also include Naomi Osaka, she was really kind of one of the first, Kamala Harris as well, those two especially. And interestingly, they're both combinations of Black and Asian, not Black, white, and theirs both involve in diasporic and international dynamic as well. But in the public sphere, They are unapologetically, unabashedly, I am this, and they stand on their and, I call it. Now, again, it's easier because it's not black and white, and their roots are not in this country coming out of the enslavement binary, right? So, but even in the beginning, the public did not know what to do. There was a lot of public hand wringing and oh my God, with Naomi Osaka, with Kamala Harris, but both of them are like, boom. And that is the first time that's happened in my life. You know, I can't say it's the first time it's happened in history, but I've never seen anybody do that. I mean, Barack Obama didn't do that, and I'm not blaming him because he didn't do it. Again, the world wasn't ready, right? So, you know, but they were the first ones to just stand on their and be real clear. I am Haitian and Japanese. I am Black and South Asian, Indian. Boom. And then that's the end of the conversation. They're not going back and forth with anybody. That is incredibly powerful, especially for younger mixed Black people to have those examples. I never had those examples. My peers never had those examples or public figures. So while there's public controversy and everybody has opinions or questions or assumptions to be addressed, that's what the tide is turning. So this public conversation is what's different and why it's significant.
Right. Yeah. Now I've heard people proudly say that they're Black Sarican or bluish, and even on television and pop culture, you have mixedish. I haven't seen that yet. Blackish. So yeah, you're entirely right. Um, do you have an excerpt from your book? You address that in your book about the mixed representations in popular
I do.
culture.
I do address it in my book. I address it in my book by talking about what I like to call Black America's favorite problematic movie. Every Black person who loves this movie gets a lifelong side eye from me, no exceptions. Okay, so this is chapter 7, titled, quite appropriately, Imitation of Life. I hated the popular movie Imitation of Life with a passion that defied words, but I never dreamed that the mere mention of it would drive me to violence. The sappy racial melodrama was one of my mother's favorite movies. She always asked me to watch it with her whenever it came on TV, both the black and white original from 1934 and the full color 1959 remake with one of her favorite actresses, Lana Turner. I was 5 or 6 the first time I saw the movie. It was the original version. I was intrigued because I'd never seen a movie about racial identity. And the main character, Piola, played by Freddie Washington, looked kind of like me, another first. But as the story unfolded, I got sick to my stomach at the way that Piola hated and rejected her Black mother and the Blackness within herself. The remake, which I saw later, was even worse. Piola's name had been changed to the less ethnic Sarah Jane, and the character was portrayed by an actress who was white and Mexican. I stifled my disgust, cursing Piola Sarah Jane as mom sobbed through the tearjerker. I figured I had to suffer through it as some kind of penance for being light-skinned. As 8th grade sputtered to an end, I was thrilled to qualify for my first summer job, even though it didn't pay anything. I was old enough to be a counselor in training, or CIT, at the downtown YMCA where my brother and I spent most of our summers while mom worked. My supervisor was a young man named Ben, a dark-skinned transplant from Chicago with a short afro. He had great taste in music. We both loved Junior Walker and the All-Stars hit, What Does It Take? And he loved to tease me about talking proper. One day he said he brought a ham sandwich for lunch. I rushed to correct him. It's sandwich, not sandwich. That's not even a word. You don't know what you're talking about, Ben teased. It's sandwich. Sandwich, I insisted repeatedly. We went back and forth teasing each other for weeks. One July evening, mom made popcorn and asked me to watch Imitation of Life with her. I did my daughterly duty, stuffing my face and groaning inwardly. As I watched the white characters exploit the black woman, I squirmed when Piola denied her truth to debase herself for the love of a white man and acceptance by a society that deemed her inferior and unworthy. Next day at work, I was rounding up the younger kids for a YMCA field trip when Ben tapped my shoulder. Did you see Imitation of Life last night? He asked eagerly. Yeah. I rolled my eyes, ready to explain why I hated it. Before I could speak, he stepped closer and said, "You remind me of that girl. What's her name? Piola. Yeah, that's it." My vision flared red, my brain flooded with heat, and my gut hardened into a rock. The next thing I knew, I'd punched Ben in his eye. Hearing his yelp of pain and watching his skin start to swell, I stared horrified at my evil hand as I scrambled to apologize. I felt even worse when I was called to the boss's office and put on probation with strict orders not to mess up again. Ben didn't talk to me after that. I wanted to know more about what made me punch Ben. Unsure how to name it or tame it, I wondered where and when that impulse might pop up again and what it would make me do. I didn't want to deny my truth, but at age 13, I didn't yet know how to weave all the parts of myself together in a world where race, color, and identity were shifting so fast, it was hard to keep track.
Wow. There's that scene in Imitation of Life that still brings tears to my eyes whenever I see it.
I know.
And that's when the mother goes to school it's raining.
Oh, I was like, that's when I freaked out. That's when I freaked out. I'm like looking at my mother like, are you gonna stop her? What are we doing? You know.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, I totally understand what that must feel like. So you were saying that you've already talked about how public response to mixed Black public figures is shifting. Do you think that this is racial progress? And do you think that this shifting is good, bad, or neutral for the country, given that we're so polarized still when it comes to just Black and white?
Yes, absolutely. We are polarized, but you know, the polarization comes from the way this country was built, how it's run to this day without ever, you know, it's all designed. That's why I'm a fan of hammering the word systemic anti-Black racism, systemic white dominance, which I use instead of supremacy. But so, you know, none of us, we're all born into the system. Nobody explains it to us. Nobody gives us a cheat sheet. We can't Google how to handle this. Maybe young kids now can. But so I love your question. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it neutral? What is this? I think that we who care and are invested in this have the potential to make it positive and to make it work towards progress. We have to want to do it. We have to do some very hard, painful work. We've got to address a lot of stuff that we didn't necessarily create, but that all of us live with, and that lives within us. Whether it's encoded in our DNA for hundreds of years and or we're navigating it now. The country's no less racist than it's ever been. And so I believe, and that's what fuels my work, is that this can be good, you know, as part of the struggle. And so that's one reason I like to talk about it. I like to open up the conversation. I like to change the conversation from where it usually gets stuck, so that we can try to basically have more unity and solidarity, because no group can fight racism alone. It's too pervasive, it's too omnipotent, right? It's everywhere. And so this is where I choose to still be idealistic and to fight for something that I have a vision of, which is us, you know, getting over the many ways we've been trained and acculturated to fight ourselves and each other, to hate ourselves, to reject ourselves, and to be at odds with each other, and get past that so we can unite and fight the enemy. As simplistic as that sounds, that's what I really believe.
Were you surprised at the backlash that Meghan Markle said that she felt because she was biracial?
No.
I was. I thought that she would have been more accepted, you know.
That's a really good question. I wasn't surprised because in general, many people, and this isn't even counting the people who are mixed, okay? Many people have strong opinions about racial identity in general and mixed people's racial identity, in particular, especially if they belong to one of the groups that the person is mixed with. Okay, especially if they belong to one of the groups. And this is something that many mixed race people share experientially as well. This group is kind of accepts me, but I mean, there's a lot of that. That's very, very common. I think that I wasn't surprised because we always get what I call identity policed. Okay, so if I'm a public figure, or even in this forum, if I say, here are the words I use to describe myself, whatever word I use, it doesn't matter what word it is. I promise you, Alma, it matters not at all which word I choose. Somebody's going to have a problem with it.
Right.
Somebody's going to hate the word. Somebody's going to say you can't call yourself Black because look at you. Other people, there's a cohort of people who say that to call yourself mixed is anti-Black. There's a cohort of people if you're mixed Black. There's a cohort of people who say that to call yourself Black if you're mixed Black is anti-Black. These are all the conversations that are going on now. Look, I spend way too much time on social media in these spaces. Everybody in these spaces is younger, way younger than me. So I'm always in learning mode. Sometimes I go into auntie mode for context, a little history, because they all think it all started yesterday. Of course, like all young people. But for the most part, it's fascinating. And so what's happening again, I could pick any word. I could say bluish and somebody's like, oh, I don't like that. I got issues with that. I could say biracial, people got issues with that. I could say mixed, people got issues with that. I could say multiracial, multicultural, no matter what word it is. Okay, so if Meghan Markle had come out and said, I'm Black, she wouldn't have gotten any less reaction, right? And so what you understand when you are mixed race is that no matter what you say, no matter how you explain yourself, how you present yourself, which boxes you check, what you write or whatever, no, there's never anything you can do or say or choose that everybody's going to be happy with, or that even most people are going to be neutral about.
Right. So, this might seem like a little naive question, but I'll ask it anyway. Is there a difference between mixed Black identity or versus overall mixed race identity? I mean, is mixed race, like if you are Asian and school me here, is one more acceptable than another if you are Caucasian and African American versus Caucasian and Indian or something?
Great question. Caveat, everybody, this is just my opinion. Because again, we don't have yet, us mixed folks, a central person or headquarters to go to that's issuing the official language outline for us to use. I got one of those, by the way, for gender and sexuality recently, a cheat sheet, which I posted. I'm like, I've been waiting for this for years. We don't have one of those. So every person you talk to is going to, like I said, use language, and something they say is going to be triggering, offensive, problematic, guaranteed. It doesn't matter, because all these words are loaded because they all evolve out of racism. All of them evolve out of racism. So to answer your question, when I say mixed race, I mean anybody of any mix. And there's people whose mixes include 6 or 7 things, right? I've got nieces and nephews who got 6 and 7 things in their mix. So, and I know a lot of mixed race people. So mixed race just means anybody in general. Again, this is TaRessa's. You hold me responsible for these definitions. I didn't create them. I didn't create them, but this is how I talk. So mixed race is anybody of any combinations where your parents are 2 different things, or one of your parents is a mix and one of your parents isn't. That's also called MGM, multi-generational mix. I know, TMI, but there's categories for my kids, the Obama kids, everybody. You got one mixed parent, you're an MGM. Anyway, or two, like Zoe Kravitz. Okay. You don't even want to know. There's like a whole vocabulary sheet. It's crazy and it's always changing. And it's every single term is always debated. So when I say mixed Black on purpose, because that's my lane, that's my experience, that's what I know about, and that's what I care the most about. It's not to exclude others. It's in the name of specificity, because specificity, that way, I believe if we're all specific, that will help us all engage with each other more knowledgeably, more authentically, and in a way where, again, we can start to get over some of this craziness that we're trying to overcome.
So speaking of authentic, buzzword, we have the Karens of the world who take it upon themselves to be the police, the citizen police. Now we have the Rachels who really, they just want to be African American so bad that they appropriate our culture and that they say they are when they're not even mixed race. They just might have on tanning spray. What is up with that? Why do you think, as complicated as things are, as much as this country focuses on race, even though they should not, why do people want to pretend that they're Black when they are not, in your opinion?
My opinion, I'm going to quote the wonderful, wonderful, brilliant, amazing author, Greg Tate, who I think he has a book by this title, I'm not sure, but they want our rhythm, but not our blues. That always sums it up for me. For me, though, however, what it is, Rachel is the poster child, and now her name is the shorthand. There are many others. The sole difference I've seen about her and the others, and many of the others work in academia, which is interesting. But then once they're outed, they're like, yeah, okay, you're right. I'm not that, I'm this. The difference is my girl's going down with the ship. My girl's going down with the ship, telling you she's Black. Like, to me, it's not even worth having a conversation with her because she is going to be Black longer than any of us, okay? I don't pretend to know why. But in general, I just see it as peak white dominance and a middle finger to Black people and Blackness to remind us. I think of it's an expression of contempt and of dominance and a reminder that they own Blackness in their minds, that they own Blackness and Black people and Black culture and can do with it what they want when they want. That's how I process it every single time.
When it's convenient for them.
Well, it's not just convenient. I believe it feeds, this is again my opinion. I believe whiteness, I think whiteness is like a monster that has to be fed all the time, a hydra-headed monster that never sleeps and has to be fed constantly. So I believe this feeds the monster of whiteness, right? Which is dominance, colonization, Columbusing, supremacy, whatever you want to call it. But I just believe, I don't think it's any deeper than that. I think it's a way for them to say, F you, guess what? It's a form of gentrification. It's identity gentrification.
Okay. So what's the real deal? You were going to tell us the real deal. What is the real deal about mixed race identity in 2021, particularly how it might have been different from 1969 with these two young girls on the school bus, not knowing where. I still don't know how to get to Jane Addams.
I don't either. Nor would I ever want to.
Back, but
yeah, no,
so
never.
What is the real deal now, in your opinion?
I think the real difference about, again, being mixed Black in 1969, 79, 89, 99, 2009, and now is, again, a couple things. There's more mixed people, and now mixed people are being counted by the government because there's now a category. Not all mixed people check those boxes. That's another story for another day. But there is now more quantifiable information available. Okay, again, more mixed race people are speaking up. It used to just be the parents of mixed race people speaking up when I was growing up. And that was even once or twice, like that wasn't often. But now mixed race people are grown. So Lacey Schwartz Delgado is making movies and, folks and other folks like that. So the public voice is growing, all of that. The loving generation kids who are, next gen from me, but they're grown and working, and a lot of them work in media, a lot of them are authors. So the stories are getting out there, the perspective is being represented in a different kind of way. And again, the public conversation is taking place. Sometimes the public conversation, often it doesn't include us. And sometimes we're not even welcomed into it, even though we're the topic. That's always interesting. I fight against that because I'm old enough that I literally have nothing to lose. And I know that. And I'm like, listen, nothing you say is going to change anything about me. So, I'm like the buffer between them and the younger folks who don't have quite as hard a shell as I do, right? But I think it's important, Alma, because look at the world we're in, not just our country. And I'm going to use an example, which is gender and sexuality identification. We have gender. What are your pronouns? Okay. Identify yourself with your pronouns. By the way, y'all, sorry, I forgot mine are she, her. All right. What are your pronouns? Gender identity. We're always learning new language, whether it's an acronym or a new term, and it's this, not that, and I am she, they, and okay. So what we're learning is the specificity of identity in general, especially with younger folks, right? Is people are demanding that their specificity be acknowledged, regardless of how anybody feels about it. We're not getting into how people feel about it, whether they like it or not. In general, I believe this contributes to the evolution of us as a species, okay? That we make more room outside the very limited, narrow categories that we've had, right? And that we start recognizing it's not that the people who don't fit on these racial or gender binaries haven't always been here, but society hasn't always made it possible for them to be recognized or acknowledged or accepted. So in the same way that we're doing that with gender identity, sexuality, I'm pansexual, I'm this, I'm that, and we're all scrambling like, well, what's that mean? I'm always like, where's help? I'm Googling, but we're all on a learning curve. So it's the same way with racial identity. So now you're going to meet somebody, and when I grew up, I said mixed, and in that environment, I had answered your question, because in that world, in Seattle, Washington, in the 50s and 60s, you had a Black dad with a non-Black mom. Most of the time, she might be Asian, but she was probably white. Okay. Right. Period. So like if you had asked me, I would have said mixed, and you would have said okay, and we would have gone on and done played double dutch, listened to a song, taught a new dance, whatever. It literally, growing up until I got out of my community, the conversation didn't go beyond what are you, mixed? Oh, okay. And They asked me that because it explained what I look like. That's all. I just wanted to understand, why do you look like that? I'm mixed. Oh, okay, girl, sure, cool. Right? Like that, it wasn't a thing until I was older. And so, so that's all part of it. So now when you meet somebody, so I've got a nephew, so I'm Black, Jewish, Native American, and some white. And I got a nephew, my brother's son, who's all those things plus Filipino. Filipinos are already mixed, which includes Black, by the way. So how many things is he? Like, he's covering many continents, right? He's Latinx, he's Asian, he's Black, he's whatever else they got in there, the native, the indigenous Filipino, whatever. You've got more and more and more people like that. And you've got people, and it's complicated because it used to be when I was growing up, what are you? What are you? What are you? Black people just wanted to know whose back you were going to have when the stuff went down. Black people just wanted to know where you stood. And the premise was there was either or. Are you on this side? Or are you on that side? We just want to know what we can expect from you. Right? When
Right.
Nowadays it's way more complicated than that. And then the presumed Blackness is also different. And there's a new movement, younger people, there's basically self-described some gatekeeping going on among younger Black people, where they're in some spaces are like, we don't want you in this space unless you are unambiguously Black. We don't want biracial people in this space. And so this is going on, a lot of it digitally, but a lot of it in real life. And it's new, But it's very different than what we grew up with, where there was never any situation, other than one I described with my bully. But once I found out the real deal on that, it didn't even fit the description, where a Black person has said to me, "You can't be here. You're not Black enough. You got to go." Like, I'm 66 years old. I've been in Black spaces most of my life. It just hasn't happened. But nowadays, for younger mixed people, I could assume some things because of my life experience. They can't move with those same assumptions.
Right. So do you have anything else that you can read to us from your book?
Sure, I can.
Another excerpt?
This
My
is the
book
one
club loved it, by the way. We read Swirl Girl, as you remember.
Yes.
Let's see, we had a Zoom meeting, I don't know, back in November, was it?
I think so, yeah.
And yeah, your book got some really good reviews. We really enjoyed it. So you have something
Thank
else you can
you.
share?
I am so grateful. I'm so grateful people are receiving it. I have to tell you, as a writer, this book kicked my behind, and I literally, to this day, I have no idea what I wrote. I really don't know. But this story illustrates what I just talked about. Okay. So now I'm at the University of Washington going to school, and for backstory real quickly, when the fateful summer of 1968, right after Dr. King's assassination, I had a girlfriend who turned out was cousins with the two young men, Aaron Dixon, three young men, Elmer Dixon and Michael Dixon, who started the first chapter of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense outside of the state of California. They were teenagers. They started it in Seattle. It was a thriving, very powerful place. So because I was hanging out with my friend, who was their cousin, one day she said, we were bored one summer day. She said, let's go hang out with my cousins. I'm like, okay. You know, back then we just ran the streets. Okay. And he didn't go home, answer nothing. Plus my mother was at work. And we went up to, I don't know, something, 24th and Union, I don't remember, something in Union, into the storefront. I'm like, what is this? And we were at the Black Panther Party headquarters. Well, they adopted us. They put us to work. They made us read books. They gave us political education. And so this was very, very, very profound influence on me at a very young age. And I was ready to drop out of school and literally just fangirl with them all the time, because I was learning so much, right? It was just amazing what we were learning. But anyway, so I'm in college years later. I run into Elmer Dixon, who was on the university campus collecting donations for their free breakfast program. And I was taking political science class at the UW, which was kind of notorious because the professor, who was an Italian guy, radical, progressive, left wing, told students on the first day, you can take this class and come every day and do the work, or you can go work in the community and I'll give you credit. Well, I was like, oh, really? And I walked out of class into Elmer Dixon and I'm like, hey, Elmer. He's like, hey. And I'm like, what's up? And he said, we could use your help with the free breakfast program. Sounds great. I said, sign me up. You have to get up at 5 in the morning and cook for a bunch of kids. You know, I'm 18? He said, regarding me skeptically, I could do that. I said confidently, though I'd never done either of those things in my life. We exchanged phone numbers and I gave Elmer my address where a van would pick me up before sunrise the next day. I barely slept, terrified that I'd missed the 4:30 a.m. alarm. Bleary-eyed, I showered, dressed, and ran downstairs to get in the Panther van, fighting to keep my eyes open. Elmer, of course, was as jovial and energetic as ever. While beautiful children in all shades of brown filled the tables, Elmer taught me to cook grits, which I'd never even tasted before. Make sure they don't have lumps, he emphasized. These kids will talk about you if your food is nasty. I stirred the grits as if my life depended on it, smushing anything that threatened to turn into a lump. I cook them the same way now, by the way. I measured the salt and pepper exactly as Elmer showed me and was relieved when none of the children complained. By the time we'd fed them all and cleaned up, I was ready for a nap. But we jumped in the van, went back to school, high on the feeling of making a tangible difference. The next day, Elmer taught me how to make French toast. While we were cleaning up afterwards, a Black woman volunteer, a few years older than me, asked a familiar question. What are you? I'd started asking people to guess to see what they came up with. Common assumptions were Chicana, Samoan, Asian, Native American, Filipino. Nobody ever guessed correctly. Lack of sleep made me short on words, so I just said mixed. With what? My mama and my daddy, I retorted, grabbing a broom to sweep the littered floor. But what are you? I considered doing a breakdown of my whole ancestral history, but my soul sagged with the weariness of this endless identity dance, of being pushed to explain my existence, of not being trusted until I passed whatever test any random person felt like administering. I wanted the answer that shut the questions down. Exhaling my frustration, I muttered, Black and Jewish. But what are you? She asked. I just told you. No, what are you? We went through several rounds of her asking the same question. She kept going, no matter what I answered. After I told her my entire family history, I threw up my hands and stopped responding. But her question hung in the air. That night, a light bulb went on in my head. The next morning, I got right in her face and said, I'm Black. Right on, she said with an approving smile. I wasn't sure whether I'd sold out or just faced the truth of my reality, but I regretted the countless times I detailed my ancestral background to people when all they really wanted to know was whose back I'd have when the shit went down.
Wow. Um, there was a point in your book that was really touching to me or for me. And that was when you were planning a dinner for one of your teachers. I believe that was elementary, or was that middle school? No, it had to be elementary because I was
Third
with you
grade.
in middle school.
Third grade.
And you were planning it, and that it brought tears to my eyes, sort of like that scene in Imitation of Life, because I could just see the little girl whose mother had gone out of her way to prepare a special dinner, and you setting the table and just everything that you were looking forward to, um, until you got that call. So if you were to send a tweet to that teacher, I forget her name now.
Well,
If you were to
I
send her
didn't
a
use her real
tweet
name. I didn't use her real name.
with a limited question, with a limited space or words that you have to use, what would you tell her? What would you say to her today in a tweet?
Can I give a little setup for the audience
Please.
on it? Okay, so I'm in third grade, and I only ever had white teachers, and this was a Chicana teacher. We used to call Chicanas Chicanos, um, and I was, oh my God, like my first teacher of color, right, as we would say now. And I was just had a kid crush on her because we would come in every day and she'd greet us at the door, and she was young and she was beautiful. She was probably 22 or something, beautiful and great personality and all the wonderful things, and a good teacher. And and we'd come in the room and she'd greet every child and say hello. But for me, she'd say, Buenos dias, TaRessa. Buenos dias, Teresita. Everybody called me Terry then. So I was like, oh my God. And I wanted to do extra well in the Spanish lessons. And I just wanted to, I wanted to be her pet and I wanted to be perfect, and I adored her. So um I think I called her Miss Rodriguez or something in the book. That's not her real name. And so I had this big crush on her, and just my mother was thrilled, and my mother's love language was food. Okay, my mother was an amazing cook. Any kind of cuisine, forget about it. She rocked it. And so she suggested that we have the teacher come over for dinner, and we wanted it to be special. And I asked the teacher, she said sure, and she said a Friday night would be good. And we didn't. My mother wasn't very traditionally Jewish, like not religiously, not with food, none of those things. But we thought Friday night, maybe we'll do a Shabbos dinner, those kinds of things. And so that was cool. So we went, we made special dishes because I wanted to share something culturally. Like the Black part didn't even occur to me at that point. And so we were doing this dinner, and we, using the nice dishes back in the days when you had nice dishes, and all those things, clean the house and, all those kinds of things. She was supposed to come over. And then there was a conversation, I think, in the school that day, and, to give her the address and to make sure she was coming. And I said something about, Friday night Shabbos or something like that. And she just got a real strange look on her face. And then later, when we were getting ready, she called the house and said she wasn't coming. And so what happened was she thought I was Chicana. So she thought she was coming over for some some soul food from her culture. And, she was going to be rocking the Spanglish and the Spanish with my mama and, my little brother, whatever. And it was just, I was devastated. My heart was completely crushed. and I was devastated. That's
So
when
you
I
are
really.
sending her a tweet.
So I'm sending her a tweet. I
Yes.
would say you probably don't. Well, how many characters you get out? 480. I can do a thread. I can do a tweet thread. Okay, tweet thread,
You
one of
got
4.
140 characters.
Oh, girl, come on, I can do a thread. Anyway, I would say read my book with the link. Read my book to understand the damage you can do when you make assumptions about someone's identity.
Oh, that's good. That's nice. That's very nice. Well, in the interest of time, we have several questions from viewers, and so I'd like to get to those just so that we can answer everyone's question. And if there are more, please send them. But one of the first ones is, what advice do you have for the younger generation of Swirl Girls?
For younger mixed
If you
people
were
in
talking
general.
to your 12-year-old self, what would you say?
Talking to my 12-year-old self. I would say find ways to stand in your truth and to not be so, and this is hard, okay, it may be impossible, but to try not to be so influenced by how other people respond to you, react to you, their assumptions, their attitudes, their biases, whatever. Those are always going to be there. You're never going to be, that's never going to stop. I'm 66 years old. I get identity policed all the time. I'm sure there are identity policing questions that are about to come at me. It's never going to stop. And so what my advice is to, and my mother did a lot, and the community I grew in did a lot to immunize me for this, is to immunize yourself, is to stand in your truth unapologetically. Don't feel you have to explain yourself to people all the time. Decide who's worth explaining yourself to, and and that comes with time and age and experience. But know that you're always, 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 always going to be faced with questions, assumptions, presumptions, preconceived notions. And so the more you stand in your truth, the healthier and the stronger your identity will be, and the stronger the possibility that the people who are trying to police you or whatever, the stronger the possibility that they might learn and grow and find other ways to engage with, if not you, people like you in the future.
Okay. Do white people ask you what you are? Or do you just get those questions from Black people? Or not Black people, but other races. Do white people ask you that?
I get asked, okay, let's look at me. I get asked what I am by everybody. Now, there are different ways. No Latinx person, I understand Latinx is now out of favor and it's Latino, but I gotta tell you, I'm old. I need a minute. I need a whole thing. I don't know. But Latinx, Latino people don't ask me what I am. They often, especially depending if they're Puerto Rican or Chicano, Mexican, they often just come in with the assumption they're speaking Spanish, and sometimes they get a little upset when I say I'm not. They're the only ones I've never been asked, what are you? Okay. Every other group, no Asian person has ever asked me what I am. Asians don't often read me as Asian, but a lot of other people do. So, and then again, like many ambiguous looking people, the list is long, and my kids and I, my brother, his kids, we still will call each other, text each other if we get a new thing that somebody's asked us or thought we were. We're, oh my God, like I just added so-and-so to the list, So it doesn't matter what race or ethnicity, nationality the people are. People wonder, and you can tell people are wondering. I mean, we all wonder. It's human nature. I wonder about people. Let me tell you. Okay. I never ask. I do wonder. But sometimes it's better to ask. But then the problem with that is you answer, and then a lot of people want to argue with you, which is that's what I'm like. This is crazy, right? They're like, sweatshirt, no, or prove it, or they want you to quantify it, or they want you to now go into a 5-hour history lesson on, Ashkenazi versus Mizrahi, and I promise you, they don't even know what they're talking about. So I'm like, yo, yeah, you way deeper into this than I am. I got a Jewish mom, that's the drill, that's how we roll. But so every race.
Okay. So, do you date? I mean, I know you're divorced now. Do you date interracially? Do you swirl? Is it swirl girl swirl?
That's a whole nother show, honey. I am happily single. I'm also in quarantine for 13 months.
Right, but if you were dating, I know when you go out, I know you
okay, so it's a two-part question. I never swirled before.
Oh.
I dated one Asian guy, stories in the book, one time. And there was one white guy I was kind of interested in, but I just remember thinking, what do we talk about? Like, and so that opportunity just kind of went by the wayside. I only ever dated Black guys, Black American, Black Caribbean, various parts of the continent. I don't have color preferences at all. To this day, if I think a man is attractive, I think a man is attractive. I'm not measuring melanin, hair, none of that. I like you or I don't. I did decide after I got divorced and I knew I wasn't going to have any more kids and the world was, an interesting place, that I was open to swirling, but I haven't actually swirled because I haven't actually dated. But so I would be open to it. I still have reservations though, depending on what the guy is. I did date a Puerto Rican for a while.
What about your children? And I happen to know that one of your children is married, but how do you feel about them either dating or marrying interracially?
No, my daughter's married interracially. So my daughter is married to a white guy. All right, it's New Jersey, so of course.
Did you have any reservations about that?
No, I don't have any reservations at all. None. I mean, none at all. I can't imagine that based on race, ethnicity, or nationality, I would have a reservation or even much of an opinion about who my children are partnered with. I'm much more concerned about their compatibility. Are they good to each other? Those kinds of things. So my daughter, I don't know if my son has. The only women I've met that he's dated are Black.
Did they ever ask you anything about your experiences? You know how children, ask you about your life growing up. Did they ever say, Mom, what was it like? Or especially after they might have read your book, if they didn't ask before, did that prompt them to ask anything about?
They haven't.
They haven't read it?
I don't know. So I literally don't know. I literally don't know if they read it. I think they might have read it. They haven't. Neither one of them has asked me anything.
Funny how they do us.
I don't know if they like it. They may hate it. They may hate the way I've depicted it. They haven't sued me yet, but they haven't. Not really. Because also I've always been very, especially in raising them. They're light skinned. They're ambiguous looking. Their dad's Black, as you know. But I've always this was kitchen table talk 24/7. Like we've always talked about these things super, super openly. Sometimes people criticize me for it. So I'm trying to think if they asked me anything. I think they observed. I'd be interested in, have them on next time. You can ask them their observations when they visit Seattle. Like when they were little and we visit Seattle, we get off the plane in the airport. You're going to love this. This is a little bit before 9/11. And we're waiting for the baggage and they're looking around me, clutching my hands. They're little, horrified. And I'm like, what's wrong? And they're looking at the white people in Seattle and they're terrified. They're like, why are they so white? My kids are from the East Coast. They were born in the DMV and they grew up in New Jersey. So white people to them again are Italian, are ethnic, and in Seattle, as many people may or not know, white often means think Nordstrom, Scandinavian, which I call super white. Those are Aryan people and they're white, and the lack of sunshine before climate change meant they were super pale, right? Mm-hmm. My kids would literally be terrified in the airport at the white people.
Wow.
But they didn't. I don't know that they asked a lot of questions. One time when she was a teenager, my daughter asked me if I could teach her Yiddish. And I said, no, I don't know enough Yiddish. And I don't ever speak Yiddish to anybody, ever. in the world, because I code switch 24/7. And I'm like, if you're not, unless sometimes if you grew up in New York, because of course everybody who grew up in New York speaks way more Yiddish than I do. But other than that, they really haven't asked a lot of questions. I think they just think I'm crazy.
Right. You know, in the Black community, in some respects, we are just as color struck, if you will, as non-Blacks. So do you still think that there's that tension between, you know, the brown skinned woman, the dark skinned woman, and the one who, what is it, the light skinned long hair? I saw LSLH one day and I didn't even know what that meant. I had to look that up. Do you think that that's real?
Light and long, fair with hair. Yes. Is it
Yeah.
real? Is
I mean,
colorism?
yes, still.
Colorism is, oh, it is very real. It is as omnipotent as racism. And what's interesting is it's global. I don't know any place. There might be, I'm waiting for somebody to show me any place, and I mean on this planet, where there is a colorism, including the many, many dozens of countries in the African continent. I don't ever refer to Africa as a country. I watch a lot of Nollywood entertainment, things like that. Not all the time, but there's still colorism is everywhere in every single white people have colorism. If you want to be at the top of the hierarchy in white America, you better have platinum blonde hair and ice blue eyes. Let us be very clear. Why do you think so many grown white women dye their hair blonde? This is status. It is a hierarchical. It's not, you know, because they think they look better. It is status. So every single group that I've ever witnessed, I've had the privilege and the blessing to travel a bit internationally. And when I started realizing it was global in my 20s, I got to live in the Caribbean and South America for a while. That was when I was first like, oh, whoa, wait a minute. And then I've been to Asian countries, I've been to Brazil, and you know, now we can have the whole world at our fingertips. Colorism is everywhere. Yeah. I'm so glad that Alice Walker coined the term, because when we were growing up, it was color struck. It wasn't as easy to talk about. We didn't have the language to talk about it. We were aware of it, but we didn't have the language to talk about it like we do now. But it's everywhere, and I'm thrilled that along with these other issues, it's an ongoing public conversation. It's a hard conversation because so many people, especially if you're either end of the melanin spectrum, your life has really been defined by it. How people interact with you is so deeply impacted that you can't get away from it. But like Lupita Nyong'o, right, who we all love and adore, wrote a book about colorism. She's Kenyan from Mexico. She didn't grow up with white people. So she said she didn't experience racism until she got to the US, but she wrote a book about colorism when she was a little girl.
Yeah. Were there any events in the US throughout history that you think were pivotal or key to advancing interracial relations?
That's a good question.
Any historical events?
Any event?
Or maybe it was just...
I guess event-wise, you'd have to say the passing of Loving versus Virginia, just because I think that brought it to the public awareness at another level. Before it was opinion, you know, in the segregated South or the states where miscegenation was illegal. And even though I'm, you know, from Seattle, even though those of us who were born in the North, like I was, 13, 14 when it passed. So I was aware of it, but I was always just like, wow, that's crazy. But I understood that it was only an inch away from where I was, you know, that my parents was still controversial. So I would have to say, Alma, and it's one reason, you know, I spent my life, and maybe you did too, working in media. I think that early on I saw the impact of media in shaping public opinion, public awareness, public attitudes, public behavior, even for better and for worse. And so I think that sometimes it's kind of like, again, to go back to the gender thing, how the Caitlyn Jenner, formerly Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner situation really put America on fast forward with accepting transsexuality in the public sphere. It doesn't mean people don't grapple with it individually, you know, but I think it was like, whoosh, you got to see that. And so Brokeback Mountain with gay male relationships. Again, there's some, I think, tipping points. I think that's everything's leading up to, then you get to that tipping point. I don't know if there's a tipping point with interracial relationships. They're still controversial because, again, they're always controversial depending on the politics and the racial, ethnic, national, religious dynamics of where you live and what cultures the people come from, right? I mean, so if I'm Naomi Osaka, if I'm Haitian and Japanese, and those two countries, those two cultures, those groups of people don't have any history of interacting, there's no beef, there's no colonization or war in the past, okay, that's a little more neutral. Kamala Harris, the mix that she is, as many people know, and I know because I was blessed to be able to live in the Caribbean and I learned this, the mix that she is so common in the Caribbean, it's not even a thing. It's way more common than black and white. But when it came to light here, the US struggled to process it because it wasn't black, white, and that's all our public consciousness is set up to process. So when she said black and Indian, people were like, well, wait, does that mean, right? People, you could see people's brains exploding, and I just laughed. I said, her dad's Jamaican. Right. I mean, you go to the Caribbean. It's not even, come on, it's not even a thing. So, people here, you could really see them struggling. So I don't know if there's a tipping point. I think just, the growth of it and the visibility of it. But again, and I forget his name, please forgive me, y'all, but just today, some black coach, I don't even know what sport.
Oh yes, for North Carolina, UNC basketball coach.
Apparently, this is why people are in my DMs as I'm waking up this morning. Apparently he decided to share with the world as a black man. He is very proud that his wife is white and that his kids are biracial. And I wake up and roll over and look at my phone and I'm getting out the bed cussing like, oh, it's going to be a long day. Because there's already people in my DMs. TaRessa, are you going to write about me? I'm like, who is he? Why is he messing up my world on a day when I have this big event to prepare for? But again, so he'll be viral for a hot minute, right? But we're always going to have the conversations. We're going to have the conversations when we have a crush on a hot black actor or singer, and then we got to find out who he dates. Okay, and then we're like, oh, well, then does he go down on our crushometer? Does he stay where he was, with a caveat?
Right.
It's always a thing. It's always a thing.
Right. So we have two final questions from viewers, and I'll give them to you at the same time. And you can, they're easy. You got this. So the first one is, do you feel like the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, do you think that she really owned her blackness? That side of her, I know she's biracial. Do you think that she owned her blackness? And then the other question is, if there was a single most traumatic experience you had as a mixed black woman, what would that be?
Okay, whoa, those are alrighty then. Let's start with Meghan.
Let's go out with a bang.
So my big question to that is, I don't know her. And I'm not saying that to be her. I don't know her. So I'm processing her in the same public sphere with the same little bits and bytes of information that everybody else is. So I'm saying I have no special insights into Meghan Markle, okay? So when I look at Meghan Markle, there's obviously physical similarities. There's a big difference though. She has a black mama. And she grew up only with her black mama. Okay, now again, I don't know the specifics of how she grew up or anything else. I see her. I've only seen a couple interviews with her. I saw there was a little touching thing, I guess, before her daddy went crazy or whatever he did. Got janky back when she was little and she was struggling with the form at school. And he gave her a nice little thing and she came out with a, mixed empowerment message. But I would have to say Meghan Markle reflects the people who are, like me, super light-skinned, super ambiguous looking, all of which come with their own dynamics. And And then she's a public figure. She wasn't a public figure till she got with the prince, right?
Mhm.
So all of a sudden she goes from being a little known actress to, oh, okay, her, and everybody's processing her fast. Or people reacted to the Black elements of the wedding. For instance, we all watched the wedding. I didn't care about the royals, but I watched the wedding. Now I see people processing her. I see a lot of Black people, Black women claiming her. She is us. She is ours. We stand with her. And then there are a lot of Black people who are like, nah, maybe, not sure, not feeling it, not quite, because Meghan hasn't come out. But there aren't a whole lot of mixed race, but mixed Black public figures who have just come out and unequivocally announced, I'm Black.
Okay. So quickly, one traumatic experience before we close out. And if it wasn't traumatizing, if you didn't have one, I mean, you're
lots of traumatic
yeah, you're so
yeah, it was recent, and this was traumatic, and you all should help me with it. I need therapy on this one. So speaking of dating, there was a brother, Black man, Black American, who we were interested in each other. We went on a couple dates, and he says to me one day, and of course you all know, I mean, well, but anybody who knows me knows this topic, this is what I do. This is my life. I talk about this stuff all the time, even when I don't want to write about it, think about it, obsess about it. I have Post-it notes all over the place, the whole nine. And he says to me, and he means this, and he means it as a compliment. And I literally did not know what to do. All the questions I'm used to fielding, the assumptions, the looks, the everything, I've fielded for 60 million years. He looks at me, he said, I have no idea what you are. Y'all, no. So I am the queen of the comeback, the snap back. I mean, I've been practicing this stuff since the crib, you know what I'm saying? I was like, and we liked each other, like I really, I was like, and he said, I knew he kind of had the light exotic fetish thing going on because we talked a lot about Brazil. I know the codes, but I was like, how can you? He follows me on Facebook. How can you follow me on Facebook and not have any idea what all I talk about? So I have to tell you, that completely broke my brain.
Okay.
I was traumatized. I did not know what to do, what to say, how to process it. I still don't to this day. He's passed away, sadly, but I still do not know what to do with it. If somebody else said that to me, I would just run into the street screaming, and it was traumatizing because, again, it was so vague and large. I'm used to people either saying, what are you? And then they're cool with it, or they want to ask more questions about which parent, Ashkenazi, or I'm this, no, you're not. Or really, I thought you were, whatever they thought I was. That I'm used to, and all variations thereof. The traumatizing part was he didn't give me anything to connect to. I have no idea what you are. What, wow. And I was like, what do you mean you have no idea what I am? Like, especially because you follow me on freaking Facebook. I know that because you comment. So are you having a brain fart? Like, what? That was why, because I didn't know how to respond to, I don't have any idea what you are. And it triggered me because it reminded me of my father, who was mad at me because I didn't play on my ambiguity. And you could, his whole thing was you could be anything. I think that's what triggered me because of that.
Well, Miss TaRessa, I remember you when you were Terry.
Terry Stone, hey.
Yes, but this has been so nice. Thank you, and thank you, Brilliant Minds Collective, for inviting my homette, TaRessa Stovall, to share with you Swirl Girl, Coming of Race in the U. Oh, got it. Right on cue. Yes. So, thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you, everybody. You all are brilliant and fabulous. Your questions are awesome. And I just want to really thank you for listening and for paying attention. And let's keep the conversation going. So thank you. And thank you again, Alma, my homette, who knows, wait, you need to cut this off before she starts dishing dirt on me. But but this was just so much fun because it was just like hanging with my homie. right?
Yeah, this has been a pleasure.
Yes.
We'll have to do it again when my book comes out. It's Hope
Absolutely.
Alive. So thank you, Taisha.
Yes,
Thank you, Kevin
everybody,
Ross.
Taish, and everyone so
Taish.
much. Keith, everyone, you've all been amazing. And all my peeps who showed up, I love you so much. And I appreciate you always.